Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mutahar, and I don't know about you guys, but there's been some crazy shit that's been popping off this week. One of that crazy thing is apparently the Chinese supercomputing lab. Well, I believe their largest one has apparently been hacked with, I would say, allegedly the largest amount of data ever stolen. 10 petabytes. Yes, you heard me right, petabytes. Now you might be like, whoa, how much is a petabyte, Muta? Well, a petabyte, ladies and gentlemen, is around, I guess you could say 1,000 terabytes. Now, this is an insane amount. Now, if you look at some of the world's largest data breaches in the world, 10 petabytes from a national supercomputing laboratory is a pretty big amount, and it actually should kind of shock you if, however, it's actually real. Now, one thing I like to do on my channel is get to the facts of a story. Because, this kind of stuff interests me, right? You know what could come out of the Chinese supercomputing labs? Military information, military secrets, some real space-age shit that the country is doing that we finally get to peek at, okay? So to give you a quick idea, this is what the National Supercomputer Centers look like, and the specific one was hacked, which was Tianjin. There's also other ones available too, which again, we can go to their websites right here. So yeah, you can see this is like the Supercomputer Center in Guangzhou, so different city in China, but you can see that over here, this is all supercomputer stuff that they use to do a whole wide variety of high compute shit. Now, supercomputers are very, very expensive, and basically the way that China does it, and to an extent even the US will do this too, is they'll have these like supercomputers set up in locations. So you can see like that's the actual supercomputing center, and it's basically surrounded by, again, basically other important government sections. So very, very highly protected areas. And of course, they are very, very expensive, and they're pretty much a crown jewel for some of these countries too, because there's a lot of serious shit that happens on these systems. So this is what they kind of look like from the outside. So this is actually not entirely new, by the way, too, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to jump a little bit into the story and get all the facts, and why, apparently a lot of people were just talking about it just now. So basically, there's this hacking group called Flaming China, okay? So this is their Telegram group. You can see they've got a cute little AI like slop wallpaper over here, little Gemini, generate me an angry flaming Dargon. It's got like horse teeth for some reason. China's National Supercomputing Center research facility hacked. The data leak contains research across various fields. And again, a lot of this stuff was posted to dark web hacker forums, which again, to give you a quick idea, this is an individual called Airborne Shark 1 sharing 10 petabytes. The research list is not for sale now. Price whoever offers the most and satisfies me. So I don't know if there's like a monetary mix and you got to give this guy a little handy on the side, but the highest bidder will receive the full data set, okay? And again, this is the mails that they provided, and they did provide around 20-ish gigabytes of sample data, which is basically all that we can look at. Now, the sample data in this, ladies and gentlemen, is a bit of interest to individuals too. So to give you an idea, they provided some screenshots to prove that they actually hacked this supercomputing cluster. So here they actually do showcase the domain address, so NSCC TJ, which is, the Tianjin, I was thinking of Tijuana for a second, government and CN, and you can see over here that, this is the user IDs. So a lot of this is very important, obviously, for the individuals that have been hacked. Like if they can corroborate that, yeah, these are user IDs, like this would be the last string of a password. And of course, if they can actually see if these directories make sense. More specifically, they started to show back, again, route tables, and more specifically, what the actual, internal networks started to look like. So again, you can see this is how they're communicating between each different cluster and container and every single thing that would belong to this, supercomputing cluster. So obviously, the only ones that can really corroborate if this happened is the fucking Chinese government. And, recently the Chinese government has had some purges, if you will, too. Like 3 academics were recently, purged from the system. People who were pretty old, people who were pretty important. In some cases, there have been actual allegations of bribery and corruption that have been thrown there. But again, these are layers that have yet to truly connect to one another. I'm just going to stick to the actual hack in this situation, because that's really what interests me the most. Now, while CNN's kind of talking about this stuff and they're saying, listen, this data set, which allegedly contains 10 petabytes, is actually believed by researchers who are privy to the Chinese government and you know these Chinese cybersecurity incidents. They're like, yeah, you know, whatever they've shown, you know, the file structures, the directory trees, all of these things tend to be they tend to make sense. They actually do corroborate this story. Now, I have some suspicions of my own. To give you an idea, 10 petabytes is not a small, minuscule amount of information. To give you an idea, if I have gigabit internet, which I do 1.5 gigabits, I'm just going to go to Fedora's website, for instance. I'm going to download me a copy of this Linux distribution. So by going over here, I'm going to hit that download button, and you can see that I literally can just download it to my system. And, you know, this 2.6 gigabytes alone takes me around 40 seconds to transfer on some of the fastest speeds that I can buy in the country. Now, this is just 2.6 gigabytes taken around a minute. 10 petabytes, which, to remind you, 1 petabyte is like 1,000 terabytes. The time it takes and the money it takes to transfer that level of information is not a paltry amount, okay? Bandwidth limits, just the transferring of data alone, you know, is subject to the laws of fucking mankind, the laws of physics, all of this shit, okay? So it's going to take some time, and ultimately what's also important too is the cost as well. Now, assuming that this is 10 terabytes, if you just look up disk prices really quickly, you can see that the cheapest you can go is 24.5 per terabyte, which is 22 terabytes, and you can buy this Seagate drive right in, for instance. This is 22 terabytes, and it's like $538 Canadian. So in Canadian prices, if you kind of just do the fucking math really quickly, and if you do the Jaguar math here, you know, how many bits is this? You know, let's just say, like, if we put 1,000 terabytes into, you know, roughly 22, you're looking at 44.5, 40, is it 44? Whatever, dude, 44, and then multiply that by around, yeah, you're looking at, boy, ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at around $250,000 to fucking buy the drives it takes, not even counting the money it takes to transfer the data and fucking store it. You know what I mean? So I'm having a bit of doubt, wondering sometimes. One of the reasons why, like, I'm always down to download these things and pilfer through them, but I don't have the drive space, obviously, to even store half the fucking petabyte, okay? And half is, like, already astronomical for me. So the fact that they moved this information, you're looking at, like, $250,000, and that's just one stripe of information. You probably want to have something for redundancy because it's such a valuable set of info. Probably looking at, like, what? The costs for this are fucking astronomical, which makes me wonder how legitimate this is. But you might ask yourself the question, but Muda, how did the Chinese government not know that they were getting fucked in the ass? Well, apparently, according to the fellas over at CNN, the way that this was actually done was through a botnet. So basically, how the attacker got into the supercomputer in the first place was they found a compromised VPN domain. Now, a VPN is not just for you to change your address and go somewhere else. A lot of it is also meant for you to expose a sensitive computer and basically create like a tunnel for somebody outside the network to access. So for instance, let's say that you worked at the Chinese supercomputing lab and you needed to get access from your home. Well, they're not going to expose all the servers to the internet for everybody to start fucking like identifying or grabbing. What they'll do is they'll expose a few nodes to the outside world. And basically these nodes, which allow you to VPN into them, allow you to connect into them and become part of the internal network, the internal private network, the virtual private network, you're allowed at that point to then connect from the outside in through a controlled gateway and access the sensitive parts of this network. Now, it makes you wonder too, it's like, A, this is 10 petabytes of information. It already costs so much to transit. And how the fuck did the Chinese, like, operators who ran this not understand? Remember, this is a supercomputing, like, hub, okay? This ain't some random company, okay? This is the Chinese government. So it makes me wonder how 10 terabytes of information was exfiltrated without it effectively, like, bringing up any form of, like, red flags. So for instance, once they got access through this VPN, the hackers used what is known as a botnet, basically meaning that they had a bunch of different computers grabbed underneath their wing, and through these computers they were able to use these computers to download a vast amount of information, 10 petabytes. So again, they did this over the course of 6 months. So for 6 months, they had access to these Chinese supercomputers. Nothing was done with the security, like rotating things around. No, they were just in the system. They were downloading all this shit. And by the end of it, they just put it up on the internet for it to be sold. And again, the information that they allege is being sold is a kind of information that the CIA, or the Chinese equivalent to the CIA, basically kicks down your door and puts around in your head. Like, I'm sorry to make it sound so Hollywoodish, but the reality of it is that if you're holding on to information that contains military state secrets, bro, the government don't fucking care about sending you to a court, okay? They'll just straight up kill you at that point. Which is a pretty serious situation, and it's one of the things that has made me slightly apprehensive on downloading this. But again, this all happened back in February, so I'm starting to wonder why it's taken so long for a lot of these organizations to kind of catch up. And again, I would have covered this back in February if I had actually believed that the information was valid. In a lot of ways, the information that has been pulled apart is kind of just report papers. So some people have done great technical deep dives into the information, the sample data, and a lot of it has, information like this where they're looking at things like the B-52 bomber system, and they're trying to, I guess, identify how it's able to be a stealth aircraft. Which, for anybody that doesn't know, I think it's not B-52, it's the B-2 Spirit bomber. It's like $2 billion a piece, and apparently radar systems are just very unable to identify this. And basically, if this is flying near your ways and you're seeing the pixels missing from the sky, God is going to be in your vision very soon. But anyways, a whole bunch of extra information came out. Again, people started looking through. They found things like the aero stealth systems. They found a whole bunch of aircraft designs that could theoretically be used to counter America's stealth capabilities. Again, I wasn't entirely able to look through this information myself too, but again, there was more information too, like for instance, these clips of like military vehicles. You also had, images, again, related to like simulations. Which again, from what I'm seeing over here, you can see that there's like a warhead that's going inside and penetrating. And again, this is just like a simulation they probably had during a test phase to see how this ballistic technology could penetrate down. But it looks like a fucking bunker buster to me. And again, this is, from what I understand, the HIMARS, which is a truck the US recently just gave to the Taiwanese government. Like, at least the Taiwanese ordered more of these. And you can just see that, again, they're designed, I imagine, for ballistics and I guess delivering fucking bunker busters. Now, even further, there's more information that you sort of seen pop up over here. I guess like how radar technologies sort of tend to work over here too. Again, I'm not like a fucking military expert. I'm not seeing anything here that like screams to me. If they're speaking about stealth drone technology, stealth aircraft technology, I'll be real with you, the stuff that I've seen here kind of mirrors what I've seen on places like War Thunder. Yeah, the forums to that online video game. Yeah, surprisingly, you lose a game and they're just leaking government secrets on that shit. Crazy stuff. Now again, the Chinese government has been asked about this and really nobody knows. Like, the Chinese have not like actually acknowledged that something like this has happened. But the reality of it is that I guess with the information they've released is it kind of looks like it's pretty close to true. Like, there probably has been some breach and some things have been leaked. But ultimately, at the end of the day, okay, I don't think anybody's 1000% sort of confirmed this. And there's people that are rightfully skeptic. Like, the whole reason I brought up the cost of moving the data and storing it, when you hear the words 10 petabytes, it's like, that immediately is what makes me wonder, yeah, it's probably not happening. Like, it's probably not a real thing. Because you start to realize it's like, yeah, if there's a hacker group behind it, it's like, man, it must have been one of the most coordinated hits imaginable. It was something planned out well in advance, which I guess if you're hitting like a supercomputer lab, probably is going to be planned well in advance. But you get the idea, right? Like, there's a lot of healthy skepticism to have in this situation. It could either be the US government, or not the US government, sorry, the Chinese government has had some of its most valuable secrets leaked, or this is just somebody that's decided to make a breach forum account, draw up some cute little like reports, maybe find stuff on the internet, pull it together, and try to make it look as close as to military leak secrets as they can, so some dumb sucker is willing to actually pay money for it. Now, look, I think it's crazy coming off the heels of that Mythos video where I was talking about it like last night, like literally hours ago, and to think, It's like now that we have such an amazing, cyber warfare tool, cybersecurity tool, really, it makes me wonder. It's like if that's what's publicly available, sometimes I wonder. It's like what stops countries like the United States from like grabbing that technology and using it against their adversaries in ways like this. But again, that's just healthy super speculation on one other end right there. Yeah, it seems like apparently these Chinese supercomputer systems have been hacked. And is there a massive leak of their military secrets? It seems like whoever is behind it has put together some rather interesting footage, interesting materials. But I don't know. I'm still relatively skeptical about this. I don't know if I necessarily believe all of this. But dude, the times are a scary place right now, bro. you know, like one day you're hearing about the scariest AI go live, and the other day you're hearing like, whoa, one of the largest supercomputer clusters in China just got hacked. But based on everything that I've researched, I don't know. I'm still kind of, I'm more skeptical that it's probably not the case. Because honestly, I think if it is, it probably would have made more of a splash than people are making it. But, here I'm hoping I'm right. I don't know, man. I'm just a fat Indian guy on the internet, ladies and gentlemen. But speaking of supercomputers, if you want to get one yourself, look, supercomputers are available. This is like an like a $7,000 like NVIDIA DGX Spark. These guys went after the mother of all supercomputers, some of the hardest hitting clusters in all of China. I think more than the military secrets that I'm interested in this situation is probably like all the other research stuff that they've done, like geolocating stuff, like geoscience stuff, fossil, like anything in that regard. I'm super interested. Space exploration, because that's kind of one of the big reasons you expect these supercomputers to be used for. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it.